Welcome to my channel where nightmares live. This is Midnight Tales.
Imagine checking into a grand old hotel, where every guest is given the same warning: never open room 6. But one traveler does. Inside, the bed makes itself, the glass of water never empties, and the whispers will not stop calling his name. What happens next will make you think twice before ignoring a warning. This is the chilling tale of room 6, and why no one who enters ever checks out. The Grand Marlowe Hotel stood at the edge of town, its windows like hollow eyes staring into the night. Travelers came and went, whispering about its age, its history, its silence. At the check-in desk, the old clerk always gave the same warning: do not enter room 6. The traveler, weary from the road, raised an eyebrow. The clerk's hand trembled as he slid the brass key for room 4 across the counter. He leaned closer, voice low, urgent. That door is locked for a reason. The traveler smiled politely, but curiosity gnawed at him. The hallway was long, lined with portraits whose painted eyes seemed to follow. The air grew colder near the far end. Faded wallpaper peeled from the wall. And there it was. Room 6. The number plate hung crooked, as if it had been torn off and nailed back in place. Dust gathered on the knob, but the faint scent of lavender drifted from inside. He pressed his ear to the door. Whispers. Too faint to understand, yet too deliberate to be his imagination. His heart thudded. His breath quickened. He tried his key. The lock gave way with a soft click. The door creaked open. The room was immaculate. White sheets stretched tight across the bed. The curtains swayed though the window was shut. A lamp flickered, though no one had turned it on. On the dresser stood a silver tray, holding a glass of water. Fresh. Cold to the touch. The traveler stepped inside. The door slammed behind him. The lock clicked. The whispers grew louder, circling the room. The bed groaned as if something unseen had just sat down. The traveler froze. A shadow moved across the wall. But there was no one there. The mirror on the dresser shivered, as though a hand had brushed against its surface. And then the sheets began to fold themselves. Tucked perfectly. As if the bed was making itself. The water glass refilled, drop by drop. The curtains pulled shut. The lamp dimmed. The room was preparing for its next guest. The traveler's scream never reached the hallway. When the maid came the next morning, room 6 was spotless. The bed was freshly made. The glass was full. And the clerk, without looking up, whispered again: do not enter room 6. The maid paused at the doorway, her hand gripping the frame. She felt the cold pouring out from within, colder than the rest of the hotel. Her skin prickled as she glanced inside. Everything was pristine. Not a wrinkle on the sheets. Not a speck of dust in the corners. The glass of water gleamed on the dresser, untouched, perfectly still. And yet she swore she heard breathing. Slow. Deep. Right behind her. She turned quickly, but the hallway was empty. The portraits along the walls seemed to lean closer, their painted mouths twisted into faint, knowing smiles. The maid whispered a prayer under her breath and shut the door. She locked it. She double-locked it. But the key was always useless in the end. The clerk knew this. He had seen it too many times. Guests curious enough to open room 6 never checked out. And yet, the room was always ready for another. That evening, thunder rolled outside the hotel. Rain lashed against the windows, and the lobby flickered with candlelight. The clerk sat alone behind the desk, staring at the logbook. He tapped the page with a trembling finger. The traveler's name was still there. The ink dark and fresh, as if the man had just signed it minutes ago. But the date was wrong. The date was yesterday. And the clerk knew, by tomorrow, the name would be gone. Erased. As if the traveler had never existed at all. Upstairs, room 6 stirred. The curtains whispered against the glass. The bed creaked. The mirror pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. Behind the glass, shadows writhed, distorted figures pressing against the silver surface. Faces half-formed, mouths open in eternal screams. They clawed. They begged. But no sound escaped. The traveler stood before the mirror, his reflection pale, eyes wide with terror. He tried to move, but his body would not obey. It was as though invisible hands pressed him in place. His chest rose and fell too fast. The whispers were no longer faint. They were inside his head now. They spoke his name. Over and over. His own voice joined them, though he had not spoken. His reflection smiled when he did not. And then the reflection stepped forward. Out of the glass. The traveler's throat tightened, a scream trapped behind it. The air grew heavy, thick, suffocating. The reflection's hands reached for him, cold, wet, impossible. The lights went out. Darkness swallowed the room whole. Downstairs, the clerk heard the faint echo of a single scream. It was short. It was sharp. And then it ended too quickly. The hotel returned to silence. The storm raged outside, but inside, all was calm again. The clerk closed his eyes, whispering the same words he had repeated for decades. Do not enter room 6. But by morning, the sheets would be smoothed. The curtains would sway softly. The glass would be filled. Waiting. Always waiting. And someone, somewhere, would ignore the warning once more. The traveler woke to silence. Not the silence of a sleeping hotel. But the suffocating silence of a place cut off from the world. He was lying on the bed. The sheets were perfectly tucked around him, so tight he could barely move his arms. The glass of water sat on the dresser, still full, untouched. But the curtains were gone. In their place was a wall of black. Not shadow. Not darkness. Something deeper. Something alive. The traveler struggled, the sheets tightening with every movement, pulling him deeper into the mattress. His breath quickened. The whispers returned, swirling around the room like a storm. They grew sharper, clearer. They were not words at first, just hissing, murmuring, sobbing. Then voices began to form. Dozens of them. Hundreds. They spoke all at once, some pleading, some screaming, some laughing. He recognized one voice among them. His own. It was calling from the black wall. Faint at first. Then louder. Let me out. His blood turned cold. The mirror on the dresser began to ripple. His reflection was gone. In its place, he saw the faces of others. Men and women, their skin pale, their eyes hollow. Some were old. Some were young. All were trapped. They pressed their hands against the glass as if it were a window, mouths moving in silent cries. The traveler's pulse hammered in his ears. He tried to scream, but the sheets pulled tighter, wrapping across his chest, binding his throat. The lamp flickered once. And then he was no longer on the bed. He was standing. But not in the room he had entered. The wallpaper was different now. The air stank of mildew and iron. The hallway stretched before him, endless, lined with door after door after door. Each one bore the number 6. Some doors rattled violently as if something inside was desperate to get out. Others wept with long, drawn-out moans. A cold draft carried the scent of wet earth, of graves left open. The traveler staggered backward, only to find that behind him there was no wall. Just more hallway. More doors. More 6s. Endless. The whispers followed him here. He could hear them behind every door, voices clawing at his ears. He reached for one knob. It was ice cold, wet, as if drenched in blood. The door cracked open. Inside he saw himself. Lying on the bed. Eyes wide. Sheets tucked tight. Mouth open in a soundless scream. The traveler slammed the door shut, gasping. His hand shook uncontrollably. From down the hallway, a single door creaked open on its own. The darkness inside pulsed like a heartbeat. A figure stepped forward. It was him. The reflection again. But its face was wrong. Its eyes were black pits. Its smile stretched too wide, too sharp. The reflection whispered his name, voice echoing down the endless hall. It raised its hand and pointed. Every door shuddered violently. The whispers turned to screams. Screams that shook the walls, rattled the ceiling, tore through his head until he thought his skull would split apart. The traveler stumbled, fell to his knees, clutching his ears. The reflection walked closer, silent now, its smile unbroken. The traveler crawled backward, desperate, but there was nowhere to run. The hallway bent, twisted, folding in on itself. The doors slammed one by one, echoing like gunshots. Until only one remained open. Room 6. The reflection reached for him. The traveler felt a hand, cold, wet, inhuman, wrap around his throat. The blackness from the doorway swelled forward, swallowing him whole. And then. Silence. Downstairs, the clerk sat at the desk, staring at the logbook. The ink where the traveler's name had been was already fading. By morning, it would be gone completely. The maid would find the room perfectly cleaned, the bed freshly made, the glass of water full. And the warning would be whispered once more. Do not enter room 6. The traveler opened his eyes. There was no bed. No dresser. No glass of water. Only soil beneath his hands, damp and cold, as though he had woken in a shallow grave. The air was heavy, carrying the stench of rot and rain. Above him, there was no ceiling, only a sky of swirling gray, as if painted with ash. He pushed himself up slowly, trembling. All around him stretched a vast field of doors. Each one stood upright in the earth, freestanding, unconnected to any wall. Each bore the same number, 6. Some were ancient, their wood splintered and warped. Others gleamed as if newly polished, waiting for their next hand to turn the knob. The traveler's pulse thundered in his chest. He staggered toward one door, reached for its handle. The moment his fingers brushed the brass, the whispers began again. They seeped through the cracks like breath. He pulled back sharply. The whispers swelled into cries. Children, women, men, layers of voices overlapping, building into a desperate chorus. Help us. Let me out. Stay with us. The traveler clutched his head. The earth beneath him vibrated. One door in the distance creaked open on its own. From its black maw, a figure stepped out. It was not his reflection this time. It was someone else. A man in a torn suit, face pale, eyes empty. His lips moved silently, forming words the traveler could not hear. Behind him, another figure emerged. A woman in a nightgown, her head tilted unnaturally to one side. Then another. And another. They kept coming, spilling into the field from dozens of doors, shambling forward in jerks and spasms. Each face was hollow, yet familiar. The traveler recognized them from the mirror in room 6. The trapped. The lost. Their steps quickened. Their whispers sharpened. The traveler stumbled backward, his heart hammering, until he hit another door behind him. It rattled violently at his touch. Hands clawed from the cracks, pale and skeletal, reaching for him. He screamed and pushed away. The crowd of figures drew closer, surrounding him, their mouths opening wide, too wide, stretching until their jaws cracked. The sound was deafening, a chorus of snapping bone. Their voices merged into one, low and guttural. Stay. The traveler spun, searching for an escape. And there it was. Far across the endless field, one door stood apart. Its frame was lit faintly with a sickly yellow glow. Unlike the others, its number plate was missing. It was not marked with a 6. Desperation drove him forward. He ran, the ground soft beneath his feet, the whispers chasing at his heels. The figures followed, their movements unnatural, yet impossibly fast. Closer. Closer. He reached the glowing door and grabbed the knob. It burned cold against his palm, colder than ice. The door fought him, resisting, but he pushed harder, heart racing. The whispers turned to screams, shaking the field of doors. Every figure shrieked, their voices clawing into his skull. He yanked the door open. Blinding light spilled out, searing his eyes. For one heartbeat, he thought he had escaped. The light consumed him, pulling him forward. And then, he was standing in the hotel lobby. Everything was as it had been. The chandelier glowed softly. The clerk sat behind the desk, head bowed. The logbook lay open. The traveler's name was written clearly, in dark ink. Relief surged through him. He stumbled to the desk, voice shaking. "Sir. Room 6, something is wrong." The clerk slowly raised his head. His eyes were hollow sockets, black and endless. He smiled. And in that moment, the traveler understood. He had not escaped. He had only returned. To the beginning. The lobby flickered, the walls shifting, warping, peeling away. The air turned cold again. The chandelier swayed above, its crystals dripping red. The logbook bled ink, the letters of his name smearing, twisting, erasing. The clerk's voice was low, rumbling, echoing from everywhere at once. "You are part of room 6 now." The traveler spun around. The front doors were gone. The staircase twisted into impossible angles. And at the end of the hallway, only one door remained. The brass plate shone faintly. The number etched deep. The traveler's legs trembled as he stared down the hallway. The air was thick, pressing against his chest, every breath shallow and heavy. The door marked 6 gleamed faintly, its brass numbers glowing as if alive. He whispered to himself, though his voice shook too much to sound real. "This is not real. This is not real." But the floor creaked beneath his feet. The portraits on the walls tilted, their painted faces sneering, watching. The clerk at the desk was gone. The logbook was gone. Only the door remained. The traveler backed away, pressing his hand against the wall. It felt damp. Warm. As if the hotel itself was breathing. A low hum filled the hall, vibrating through the floorboards. It grew louder. Deeper. Like the sound of 100 voices moaning from somewhere beneath the floor. And then, a hand pushed out from the wallpaper. The fingers pressed against the surface like clay, stretching it outward. Another hand. Another. Pale arms clawed, straining to break through. The traveler stumbled, his heel striking the rug. The carpet writhed, shifting beneath him as though something crawled just under the weave. He fell hard, his palms scraping against the wood. The whispers returned, circling him, closer, sharper. He pushed himself up and ran. The hallway stretched longer than before. The door at the end seemed farther away, yet every other door had vanished. Only room 6 remained. His footsteps echoed unnaturally, each strike sounding like it belonged to someone else, someone chasing him. He dared not look back. He reached the door and gripped the knob. It was slick, wet. His hand came away red. Blood. The whispers stopped. Silence filled the hall, thick, suffocating. The traveler hesitated. He wanted to turn back, but there was nothing behind him anymore, no clerk, no desk, no walls. Only black. Only the void. The door creaked open on its own. Inside, the room was not a room at all. It was a vast chamber, lit only by a pale, shifting glow that came from nowhere. The floor was stone, cracked and wet. The walls pulsed like veins beneath flesh. And in the center stood a single, broken bed. Its sheets were torn. Its frame rotted. Yet it was made perfectly. Waiting. The traveler stepped inside, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The door shut behind him. The glow grew brighter. Shapes began to emerge from the walls, figures pressed against the surface, trapped just beneath it. Their mouths opened in silent wails. Their hands reached, straining, their eyes wide with terror. He recognized them. The man in the suit. The woman in the nightgown. The faces from the mirror. All of them. All the missing. The whispers erupted again, deafening, a storm of voices crashing inside his skull. They screamed one word, over and over, until his ears rang. Stay. The traveler fell to his knees, clutching his head. The bed groaned. The sheets pulled back, though no one touched them. The mattress sagged as if something heavy had lowered itself upon it. And then he saw it. The true occupant of room 6. It rose slowly from the bed, tall and twisted, its body shrouded in shadow. Its head brushed the ceiling, its limbs too long, bending at wrong angles. Where its face should have been, there was only a void, black and endless. From the void came every voice at once. Every scream. Every whisper. Every cry for help. The traveler's legs refused to move. The creature leaned down, its faceless head inches from his own. Cold air poured from it, colder than death. The voices inside the void all spoke in unison, rattling his bones. You are ours now. The walls shuddered. The figures trapped within them screamed silently, their hands pounding against the surface. The bed's sheets coiled outward, slithering across the floor like pale serpents. They wrapped around the traveler's ankles, his wrists, his chest. He thrashed, but the more he struggled, the tighter they pulled. The creature's void face opened wider, a swirling abyss drawing him closer. He felt himself pulled forward, dragged across the floor. The whispers clawed at his mind, pulling his thoughts apart. The sheets tightened, crushing his chest until he could no longer breathe. And as the void swallowed him, he realized the truth. The hotel was not haunted. The hotel was alive. And room 6 was its heart. The traveler vanished into the void. The sheets slid back onto the bed, smooth and perfect. The glass of water on the dresser refilled, a single drop of condensation sliding down its side. Silence settled once more. The whispers faded. The walls stilled. And room 6 waited. Downstairs, the hotel lobby returned to its quiet state. The chandelier gleamed. The fire in the hearth crackled softly, though no one had lit it. The clerk sat behind the desk, his logbook open before him. The page where the traveler's name had been was blank. No trace remained. The front door swung open with a slow creak. A new guest stepped inside, suitcase in hand, shaking the rain from his coat. The clerk looked up, his hollow eyes hidden by shadow. His voice was steady, rehearsed, eternal. Welcome to the Grand Marlowe Hotel. He slid a brass key across the desk. And then, leaning forward ever so slightly, he whispered the warning he had whispered 1,000 times before. Do not enter room 6. But the guest only smiled politely, curiosity glimmering in his eyes. And the hotel, hungry, patient, alive, smiled with him. Waiting. Always waiting. For the next name that would never be written.